Where to Hunt podcast. It's okay.
Hi, I'm Dan Small, host of Outdoor Wisconsin, and I listen to Where to Hunt.
It's okay.
I'm Kurt Geyer with Working Class Bow Hunter. I listen to Where to Hunt podcast, and it's decent.
It's all right.
Hey, this is Bud Fisher with Catching Deers, and I think the Where to Hunt podcast is all right.
Hey everybody, howdy, and welcome to the Where to Hunt podcast. Coming at you from the Okayest Hunter podcast studio in the Midwest, the podcast that connects public land hunting enthusiasts. Mix it up a little bit there, everybody. Switch it around. Head on over to okayesthunter.com and use code W2H podcast, and you're going to save 10% off some OK gear. It's okay. We just dropped a new t-shirt and hoodie today. Shoot deer. Don't overthink it.
Don't overthink it. Just
That's
shoot
it.
deer.
Just shoot the deer.
That's all you got to do.
Try not to miss. But that's the premise.
Guaranteed one of those every so often.
Yes, sir. Speaking of that, on the produced podcast version, you'll hear my story of how I waffled out on one. Just
Yeah, you did.
Sent it sailing over the back of a nice buck. I'll never forget it. You learn a lot of lessons that way, the hard way. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's what we got going on. How's your week going so far?
Can't complain. Text calls are up. It's heating and it's always plumbing season, but it's definitely heating season for me. So, yeah. Life is good.
All right. I like the shirt you got on there. Speaking of Okayest Hunter, nice
Not
blaze
bad,
orange. It sure is pretty neat.
Yeah.
A couple other call outs here. We are partnered with Fleet Farm. Greg and I were just reviewing their weekly ad stuff. So if you do a Google search for your Fleet Farm, it'll pull up whatever's on sale at the Fleet Farm that's nearest to you. So maybe the things we're calling out here in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin might be different for you if you're in like Dodge County or wherever.
Yeah, if you're shopping in another
Appleton
location, everybody's got different sales. So here we are. What's cooking here in Oconomowoc, Eric?
Well, it's funny because you're like, oh, should I bring some stuff up for snacks? And I was like, well, if we go to the Fleet Farm, they have 2 for $4 dry roasted peanuts right now.
That's pretty nice.
2 for $4.
2 for $4.
So if you're heading somewhere on a drive and you need some snacks, I think you know where to go. And for any of the online shoppers, we will have a discount code for our listeners soon. Big wheels turn slow. So, they're working all that out for us. We're excited to be part of them. And for now, just get your butt into the store and see what you want to get. That's what I got for that.
Do it.
All right. We got some more stuff here. What do we got? Make sure I get my buttons right here.
Wake up and smell the coffee. Backwoods grind coffee, that is. Now, this ain't your fancy schmancy city boy coffee. This is what your grandpappy used to drink. And lucky enough for you loaf-around slack asses, they got a subscription service. Deliver any of their 6 blends right to your door, even a sampler. I like the Fireside blend, nice and dark. But they got something to suit every one of your tastes, light to dark and everything in between. Backwoods grind coffee, for those who work hard and play harder.
W2H, Rut Club.
Wrong button, and that one doesn't stop playing. Can't turn that one off. We'll try again in a second. That one's going to take a minute.
Wow.
So while that one's running, we'll just see that go down. Why don't you do Vector, and then we'll finish up.
Yeah, so if you're looking for a custom-built arrow, one that's built to your spec, check out vectorcustomshop.com. You can order a 2-pack of arrows built pretty much however you want. If you want to try 2 different spines with different weights up front, they're rocking the Ethics insert-outsert system. Pick 2 different ones, give them a test flight, see what shoots best for you, and then you can go over and order a half dozen or a dozen of them. And when you go check out, use code WHERE2HUNT, and that'll save you 10% off anything on vectorcustomshop.com.
10% is pretty good over there. Okay, I got it. This time.
Take a look at your feet. Are you wearing Gumleaf USA boots? If you said no, you gotta reevaluate some things. Each Each pair is handmade and tested to take over 1 million flexes. These boots will take just about anything you can throw at them. Use promo code W2H2020 for 10% off your final purchase at gumleafusa.com.
We like our Gumleaf boots. Okay, by the way, too, one other announcement here. I think we said it last time, but for those that can't see the camera that are listening in podcast land, just picture this beautiful 12-point drop tine buck. And then think about if you're going to celebrate, or like maybe you're
Drowned your sorrows.
trying to drown your sorrows from missing. You can check out Drop Tine Spirits, droptinespirits.com. And then be sure to check out their 12-point bourbon. That's what we're drinking. Drop Tine Spirits is the official drink of the Where to Hunt podcast, and their 12-point bourbon is like deer camp in a bottle. It is good. So
I think it's smoother than deer camp in a bottle, to be honest with you.
yeah, it's probably like a classy deer camp in a bottle.
Very classy.
It's like deer camp if you had leather chairs.
Right.
Yeah.
And cigars and
Yeah.
drink your drink with
Some
a pinky.
people got that. We're just not at that level in life yet, but this makes us feel like we can be. So
It's quite good.
that's what we got going on. All right, let's bring our guest on. Greg, I think due to the last name, you're going to do the introduction.
So we have with us tonight Bill Vanderheyden with Iron Will Outfitters. How we doing, Bill?
Good, guys. Thanks for having me on. How you doing?
Doing great.
Yeah, we're good. We're just getting rolling here. So we're excited to have you. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and out of the woods to hang out with us tonight. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you got going on, where you're from, all that good stuff.
Yeah, you caught me at a good time. I just finished a Montana elk hunt, and I've got about 2 weeks without a hunt planned. So I'm in the office for a while here trying to catch up. Yeah, I'm originally from Wisconsin. I grew up there, went to school in Madison for mechanical engineering at the UW there, and worked in the Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota area for several years, and then moved to Colorado about 20 years ago now.
So you're still a Badger fan and Packer fan?
I am, definitely.
All right.
Badger fan and Packer.
Awesome.
I haven't seen many here. I've been in the field a lot, but it's good to see the Packers are still at 4-1 right now, I think. So
4-1.
It's great.
Yeah, they couldn't pull that W out on the last one. They got, in my opinion, kind of creamed. I didn't watch much of it, but
That was pretty ugly.
seemed rough. Oh, well. Still got a good record like you'd called out, so we don't have to be too depressed about it.
Yeah.
So you are running what seems to be a fantastic company with incredible products. Maybe tell us kind of how that got started. Maybe that has to do with your move a little bit or what have you, but we'd love to hear a little bit of the backstory.
Yeah. So I grew up, whitetail hunting, loved bow hunting whitetails in Wisconsin. I had an opportunity for a job out in Colorado and really I'd always kind of wanted to elk hunt and go hunt in the mountains, and took the job, moved out here, and started elk hunting. It was tough. It was, a lot of things I'd learned from whitetail hunting didn't really apply to elk hunting. It was a lot to learn there. And when I took a few years before I got a shot on a bull, and shot a little too far forward, hit the shoulder blade, shoulder bone anyway, and broadhead failed, got very little penetration, and I was pretty devastated. I think the bull probably lived through it, but I spent the whole week looking for him, and I was really bummed that my broadhead couldn't get through that, what seemed to be a back edge of the shoulder blade hit. And I'd used the head I'd used, same heads I've been using in Wisconsin for whitetails, and they've done fine there. And just think with that bigger animal, bigger bones, just more likely to fail. And so I started really, as a mechanical engineer, I started really kind of scrutinizing the broadhead design and saw the failure modes to it, and started researching different broadheads, buying and testing a lot of them, just trying to find kind of the best broadhead out there. And after a year or so doing that, I just decided that, nobody's really using premium materials and premium manufacturing processes everybody seemed to be making them, to hit a certain price point, and kind of make them, good enough for most people, or really for, most whitetail shots, but really not kind of as good as they could be. So I started a several-year process of design, analysis, prototyping, testing, iterating on design. Went through a number of steels and heat treat processes. Went through quite a few geometry changes to the blades, and after several years of doing that, I got to head to where I really was confident in it. I put it through a couple of elk where I was getting pastures at long distance, through shoulder blades, staying sharp, no damage. And so I was getting the good long range flight, the excellent penetration, without bending or breaking. It really slows down, hurts penetration. And I consider bringing it to market. I really just had made it for myself and my friends and family, but met a guy up in the mountains that was a younger guy. We were both backcountry hunting, and we started hunting together for a few years, and he had a marketing background, and we decided to team up and bring a product to market. And that was 2016. We formed the company, and about January 2017 is when we first went to the Denver Sportsman Show and launched the product.
Wow, that's kind of perceivably fast. 2016 go to kind of bring the plan together, in 2017 going to market. What show did you go to out of the gate?
Just the International Sportsman's Expo in Denver.
In Denver.
You must have. What did that feel like for the kind of the launch? The debut. How did that go for you?
Well, really, it started slow. Nobody had heard of the product. We just first were showing it there, and it was really So it started pretty slow in 2017. We, a lot of guys don't want to try the newest thing out without hearing how it worked for other people. Really,
sure.
We placed it with some guys that we knew were just killers that had gotten a lot of animals. Guys like Aaron Snyder out of Denver, who is he has his own CafaroCast podcast. He had Gertie Bowman podcast for a while, but anyway, he gets 20 plus animals a year. We had him hunting with it, and he gave it high reviews. We had a few key guys that really kind of agreed that it was a step up from what was available out there, and so it was a slow start, but I think as people used it, they realized, and to be honest, I was amazed at how well they worked compared to what I thought was possible with the broadhead. If you'd have told me, before I started, that you could have a broadhead actually get a double shoulder blade pass through on a bull elk at a long distance, say 50, 60 yards, go through and stick in the ground on the other side and still shave hair with it, I would have thought, that's crazy. But really with the right tool steel, the right heat treat process, the right sharpening process, multi-stage grinding and honing, really high strength ferrule materials. We use either titanium, grade 5 titanium on our lightweight heads, or a hardened steel on our higher weights. It's achievable. And I think a lot of people don't realize, they'll think, well, my broadhead's all steel construction right now. Steel can vary from a bar that you can bend in half with your hands to something that's, incredibly strong and hard, through the different steel types and alloying elements and heat treat process. The other thing that a lot of people don't realize, I think, is just the difference you can get with, say, a cut on contact 2-blade type head versus a 3-blade chisel point. And for sure for a mechanical, but just the huge difference in force to penetrate that you have with those different head designs, just to begin with, just with that geometry. And then as you get something that's extremely sharp and holds its edge as it slices all the way through, and the force is just a fraction of the force it takes for the other heads out there. So you get that extreme penetration. We get guys that are taking frontals on elk and coming out the hind quarter. And so the penetration that's possible with, the highest end materials and processes is I think what's really happened is when most people have tried them and they have that kind of experience, they're just kind of blown away and they tell their buddies, and they're just strong, supporters and customers. And so we've grown a lot in the last really just few years since this is our fourth year since we've launched, and our marketing budget is very small. It's almost all just word of mouth. People have good experience and pass it on.
Yeah. That's the best marketing. I mean, truly, that and referrals are the best marketing you can get. And if you have some bigger names that are standing behind your product, not because maybe you're paying them some huge dollar amounts, but because they truly believe in it and they're having better success with it, it's going to reverberate and create a ripple effect for sure.
Yeah, and a successful hunt, I mean, you can't ask for better advertisement.
Yeah, and guys like Cameron Haynes have used my broadheads, and he's been showing them a fair amount when he's out shooting broadheads. He shot his bear with it last year that he carried out over his shoulder. So I couldn't afford to pay Cam Haynes to shoot him. I haven't paid him anything. I just gave him a few broadheads when I met him, and he's been great about giving them a try. And I think he's using them because he realizes, and he's told me that they just always fly through, and they're very sharp and really strong and durable and things like that. So yeah, I agree. That's the best. I think great marketing only gets the company like really rolling for a year or so, and then people realize that this product isn't what
you gotta have the chops. You gotta have the chops to back it up. What's this saying? Like I don't know, like Chris Farley this, but you can't. I mean, you could spray paint a turd gold, but it's still a turd. And in this case, you get true gold. There's no turd here, right? You don't have to even spray paint it at all. It's just beautiful by itself.
Yeah, I've done product development as a mechanical engineer for many companies for about 25 years. And that was always kind of a battle with marketing. I mean, really good marketing guys, they don't need a good product. They just, come up with their spiel of how they're going to sell it. And in fact, it was often an argument of, I'd want to make a product better for some company, but the costs wouldn't necessarily justify a higher selling price. And so that was often a battle that I was always trying to make the top performing product. And if we couldn't justify, say, a price increase or that the customer would for sure know about it or want it, it was very hard to get those improvements in. So that's one thing. When I started the company with my partner at the time, Eric, that was one thing I required, is that I want to use the best materials, manufacturing processes. I want to make this as good as possible because I want to use it. I want to be a better bow hunter, and I'm going to use the products, and I don't want to compromise.
And you'll know in your mind, if you were to have, it's like you're your own worst critic. So if you were to compromise, I don't think you could live with it, just even for yourself, let alone your customers.
Right. Yeah. It's just not what I was interested in doing. There's enough other cheap heads out there that, just launch a new head design each year or whatever. But I mean, to me, they're kind of all the same old thing. Most of them are just low end, low cost materials, aluminum, often aluminum ferrules or soft steel ferrules, and 420 blades. 95% of the broadheads out there are similar in that way, that they're just using the lowest cost, materials, manufacturing processes. And I mean, I understand companies got to make money, especially big companies. There's a lot of overhead, a lot of people to support. And when you're selling broadheads, 3-pack for $30 or $40, your manufacturing costs with those big companies has got to be like maybe 25% of the selling price. You've only got a couple of dollars total for materials, manufacturing processes. And yeah, I mean, our broadheads cost more, of course, but they're costing, 10 times as much to make as a lot of the heads out there.
Right. They do cost more, but you look at a standpoint where if, you want to take your skills to the next level as, we'll call it a bow hunter or a woodsman, and you want to take responsibility of learning how to sharpen them. I mean, I've got a couple of the V100s that I've shot 3 deer with, pulled them out, like you said, pull them out of the dirt, run them over some sand cloth, and then strop them, get them all nice and sharp again. They're shaven hair, stuff it back in the quiver, and get it going again, on the next deer that comes rolling through. I don't know how many of other broadheads I've used where I use them up, I'm looking for replacement blades. It's that time of year where you can't find replacement blades, and replacement blades, you get enough for 3 or 4 heads for, call it $15-$16 for replacement blades. And if you're shooting a lot of deer like I was for a while there, it adds up over time. So if you can not lose the broadhead, the broadheads really, they last a lot longer. They're more durable.
Yeah, it's a different way of thinking for most people, and it was for me too, that a broadhead, that you'd reuse a broadhead. I was used to something's always bent or broken on broadheads. But through prototyping and testing, it was expensive just to make a small batch of blades and heads. And so through my testing over the years, I was reusing them a lot, resharpening them. And I realized that, hey, once I went to the, a high enough strength ferrule material and high enough strength and impact toughness blade tool steel, A2 tool steel, that, through an animal, through even heavy bones, they were still spinning true. And so, yeah, they can be touched up and shot over and over. Got a friend of mine that was doing some doe patrol and shot 7 does so far with one head. And I've shot 2 elk in 1 year with the same head myself. And we've had, so there's a lifetime warranty on them. Typically you can touch them up. We've got some sharpening videos on our website, how to do that. You can typically, sometimes the first deer, say you shoot, you can pull it out of the dirt, clean it up. If you can still shave hair with it and it looks fine, spins true, you can put it right back in your quiver. That's kind of a test I do is it, shaving hair on my arm or not? If not, if there's a sandy, a little rocky soil or whatever, might need a little touch up, but typically you can touch them up pretty quickly and go hunting with them again. And we do sell replacement blades for guys who just don't want to sharpen, but with our lifetime warranty, if you bend it or break it, we replace it. So yeah, I think overall you can actually save money. If you figure a lot of guys are buying a couple 3-packs a year of cheaper heads, at least, they target shoot some, and often they just bend in the targets and then they buy some more to hunt with, versus ours, they're more expensive, 2.5 to 3 times more expensive probably. But, if you can use them over and over and use them for multiple years, they can pay for themselves.
Yeah, it seems like more of an investment than a cost. And who was it that we were talking to that said it was kind of a joke, but they're like, yeah, my wife asked me if I'm shaving my legs because he's using his legs for to.
Yeah, that was our buddy Dave.
That was okay.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember.
But yeah, he was rehoning the edges of his and running them through, the target. And that's what I do with mine all summer long. Is
shave your legs?
No, I'm hairless enough down there, I guess. But no, I'm constantly shooting mine through foam. And I had one where I whistled right through the foam and caught a T-post. And I boogered up the tonneau tip pretty good. And I just took it and put it in the jig, and I worked that tip back. It's not perfect, but you put it in, reattach it to the arrow and give it a spin, and it still spins pretty true, and it still hits the bullseye out to 30 yards. So, I mean, that's a pretty durable, and it's 70 pounds. I think at 20 yards, I whistled through that target, and it dead centered a T-post. It actually caught just to the side and actually sliced the T-post, and I think I broke the arrow, but the head itself was fine. The ferrule was nice and straight yet. I don't know if that isn't enough testament. I mean, I've destroyed one by being an idiot and bumping my release when I was pulling back, and I I shot it right into a concrete wall and I
That was
destroyed
this
it.
last winter, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was one of my wide cuts. I bought a 3-pack to test them out, and yeah, I bumped my release as I came to full draw, and it missed the target by about 6 inches and just exploded on impact. So there's nothing stopping that. That's pretty tough, a concrete wall.
Yeah, there's been a lot of reviews on our broadhead you can see out there, and some guys choose to shoot concrete blocks, and we usually do pretty good. I mean, they usually get in there. Steel plates. So A2 tool steel is used in metal stamping dies very often because of its ability to get a sharp edge and have excellent impact toughness. So when people shoot steel plates, typically it's slicing through them pretty well. I tend to test more bones, like moose femurs, things like that.
Right,
and,
that's realistic.
I mean, the worst thing you're gonna kind of hit on an animal is a heavy bone, leg bone, something like that. Ours penetrate bone really well, and typically there's no damage. Once in a while, you get a little bit of a tip, or just a very pointed tip, can be smashed or bent over slightly, just that last 30, 40 thousandths, and typically not when I'm just shooting a still bone. It just had like thought out, but on an animal when things are moving, you see that a little bit more, where it still gets through the bone, but there may be a little side movement where you have that very pointed tip bend a little bit. And that's just, I'm talking like 30, 40 thousandths at the end. The rest of the blade, you don't bend through the main blade. It stays solid. It passes through, and you don't really lose any energy like you would on blades that are just kind of bending over, or ferrules bending, where you lose a tremendous amount of energy and the broadhead just kind of stops, right there on impact.
Sure. And what's the science behind the Tonneau Tip? Just curious.
What's the definition of the Tonneau Tip too for us lay folks over here in the room, Greg?
Yeah, so Tonneau Tip is means there's kind of a if you think, I think it was originally with like the Tonneau sword, where it's a shorter sword, and there's a second angle at the end that shortens it up, and it makes it a little more stout at the end. And there's Tonneau blade knives that are kind of for you might use it for puncturing, steel or something like that, where there's a larger angle at the end. And so the reason I did it is I was testing different broadhead designs, and what I saw from like a 3-blade chisel point or 3-blade kind of cut on contact one piece versus a 2-blade in the iron will broadheads. For those that haven't seen them, it's a 2-blade head with a bleeder. So you've got a main blade, and then you've got a cross-cutting blade back behind it. And what I saw is that 2-blade heads were way out penetrating 3-blade heads, like a chisel point or even like what you would call a one-piece cut on contact 3-blade. Just night and day different. Well, it's significantly further through the target, because the 2-blade is really is a cut on contact, whereas a lot of 3-blades, they'll say they are, but they're not really that sharp at the tip. So if you push them into, say, deer hide, it's going to take a tremendous amount of force to push into that hide. In fact, I was just doing some testing recently where an iron will head, I'll pull that up here. Yeah, the iron will head was taking 11 pounds to push through hide and muscle. This is on an aoudad, but it's similar kind of to a deer for hide and hide thickness, I would say. It took 11 pounds to push the iron will broadhead all the way through the hide and muscle. The 3-blade chisel point, it took 81 pounds to push through that same hide.
Well, and you're talking really a very sharp slice off the iron will versus a sharp poke off of something with a chisel tip. It does take more effort out of a poke than it does a slice, especially if it's sharp at the end.
Yeah, you can do that for yourself. Take a 3-blade chisel point if that's what you're shooting today, and push it through a deer hide or something. It takes a tremendous amount of force to tear through the hide. But anyways, so initially I saw, well, two blades are taking a lot less, they're penetrating a lot further through all these different kind of mediums I was testing. I had elk shoulders, actually. It was one of the things I was shooting through that had the hide muscle and shoulder blades on them. And so I started looking more and more at two blades, testing more of those. But what I was finding is the ones that just were one kind of triangular shaped blade that had one angle all the way out to the point, those points became very weak and they would break on heavy bone impact. Break or bend over depending on what kind of heat treatment they did and what kind of hardness they did. But I realized from that if I shorten up that tip, so the Tonneau, we've got, so the kind of the main triangle of the blade is at 22 degrees per side, I think. And then at the end, I'm at 44 degrees per side. So it shortens it brings the tip in, shortens the overall blade length, and adds a lot of strength. Adds a lot of bending strength to that tip.
Sure, that makes sense. Well, and being shorter too, I mean, you got less chance of things levering when they're bouncing around inside of an animal too.
Well, Greg, you had that full body kind of pass through on that doe from our season opener back on September 12th. And you got a pretty deadly combo. Like you're using the Iron Will broadhead, but you're also using the Ethics outsert system and the Vector arrow with the heavy spine. I did a lot of work this summer on tuning a heavy arrow, and I just, rather than taking my bow back and forth to the bow shop to try to, flip top hats and mess around with all the stuff, I just built the arrow to what my bow could shoot and knock tuned it and paper tuned it bare shaft until I shot bullet holes. And then I came up with the combination of what it is now, and then fletched it up and shot it again, and then screwed an Iron Will S125 to the front of it, and the wide 125, and the S125 is just, it's right with the field points, and I got to do some work with the wide. I think it's a lot of it's my shooting form, but I've had great results with the smaller, the solid and the V, the vented head. So the V100 was my first head I shot, and I bought them right away in 2017, right when you guys were kind of hitting the market with everything, and went on doe patrol, killing a bunch of does right away in 2017 in an area that needed major management, and then killed my biggest buck to date with it, and then just started playing around with the heavy arrow thing, and I just thought, well, I might as well screw a heavier broadhead to the front of it too to kind of help my weight. And I really am impressed with the S125. It's a phenomenal head. Well, this might be a good.
Yeah, thanks.
I was gonna say, and I apologize.
That's been my go.
That's the delay that's kicking in. My bad. I was just gonna say this might be a good time to kind of talk about the different broadheads that you guys do offer.
Yeah, sounds good. So our initial offering was our V series heads. We make them every 25 grains. So we got a V100, V125, all the way up to V200. And those were, it's got an 1 1/16 wide main blade and a 3/4 inch wide bleeder blade for a 1.8, 1.2 inch total cut. And so that was the original broadhead I spent many years developing, going for max penetration on big animals like elk, to make it through the shoulder blades. 62 thousandths thick A2 tool steel with a cryogenic treatment and a triple temper to it. And you don't know what that means other than what it does is it makes it get a very high hardness.
Yeah, it makes it as deadly as a hatchet pretty much.
Yeah, it's trying to just get the maximum performance out of that steel, where I can get it, still have a very hard 60 Rockwell C hardness. Most blades out there are around 50 Rockwell C, and 60 compared to 50. Ask a knife maker what that difference is. It's huge in the ability to get a really sharp edge and hold that edge as you slicing through. But So I can get that 60 Rockwell C hardness, but also have excellent impact toughness. So even though it's way harder, it's also got much higher impact strength than say 420 or 440 or the other steels being used out there. And A2 has that unique ability, and that's why it's used for metal punches, stamping dies, things like that. But spent about a year working on the heat treat process to really try and push the performance much as I could out of that steel. Anyway, that's our V100. We use the same steel in all of them and same blade thickness as well, the 62 thousandths. So our original V100, it's a vented 1/16 wide main blade, 3/4 inch wide bleeder. And then we came out with our S series, which is the same size blade, but with no vents in it. So it's a solid, S series is kind of for solid main blade. So non-vented 1/16 wide main blade, 3/4 inch wide bleeder, 1.8 inch toe cut. And then we have our Buff series, which is that same head without a bleeder. If you're going for just maximum penetration, that's really all you care about. If you drop the bleeder, you can get a little more penetration potentially. And so we had guys that were going to go Cape Buffalo hunting and asking what was the best head to use. And I decided, I'll pull that bleeder out for that, because you're going through these thick, inch or so or more thick rib bones that are kind of overlapping, where you're going to hit them for sure. And you want to get max penetration through that. And we've had a lot of guys get complete pass-throughs on Cape Buffalo, both sides, with that head. But I'd recommend really for deer or elk or anything in North America, I like the bleeder. I like that cross cut to open up that hole, keep that hole open, get more blood out, more blood on the ground, and they penetrate great through bones as well. So anyway, that's our S series, Buff series, and then new this year was our wide series. So it's an 1 3/8 wide main blade with a 3/4 inch wide bleeder. So for 2 1/8 inch toe cut. And this one, people have been bugging me for a while, just saying they're getting such great penetration that they feel like they could get through the animal with a wider head, have a little more room for error. If you hit back, say a liver, one lung, or just liver, or even guts, just to cause more trauma, get the animal down faster. I think the last 8 whitetails I shot died in sight. So I was really trying to argue to people, you don't need a wider head, but in the end, I started prototyping, testing it, and I think it's a great head for whitetails. The buck I shot last year in Indiana, it was a one long liver hit, and it ran 100 yards and dropped dead. And man, there was a lot of blood. And I feel like just having that bigger cut and more, more blood flow probably did drop that animal quicker and made him die faster than he would have. The same thing if you hit even further back than that. So I still like our standard heads. Our S125 is kind of my go-to for elk. My shots on elk this year were pretty far. I almost hesitate to say how far, but I do shoot our broadheads every day at long range, 50 to 100 yards. I try to shoot a few at 100 yards every day and so I do a lot of long range shooting. My bow is well tuned. My arrows are precise, but anyway, my Colorado bull, 82 yard, complete pass through, following the arrow, 20 yards past it in the brush, and an animal ran. It was through the lungs and top of the heart. That took off running, made it about 50 yards, just tipped over and dropped. And so at that distance of pass through, I mean, they fly really well and they get excellent penetration. Then my Montana, and it was a big bull. It was about a 340 rack, and that was the biggest bodied animal I had ever seen. Those hindquarters were hard to lift, so that was a giant animal. In Montana, the shot I just had a few days back was 64 yard shot in a crosswind, and I shoot a lot out here in the valley, here in the foothills of Colorado, and so I'm shooting in the wind a lot. I've got a weather station. I know what the wind is when I'm shooting. I track, how much drift I get. So I have a good feel for how to make the shot in the wind. And, I aimed a few yards right. I knew it was going to blow a few inches, I should say, a few inches right. And sure enough, that's exactly how much it drifted. I hit right through the crease and got a double long pass through on that bullet at 64 yards.
Awesome.
So those are both for the S125. Our V Series, S Series are excellent. I think long range shooting are wide. We had all our testers shoot to 60 yards and report good groups, but I kind of tell people for the whitehead, it's kind of 50 yard and under head. A great whitetail black bear head, I think, and I carry them in my quiver for elk hunting too. I just I put them in when I'm over water. I think the shot's going to be under 50, but when they're potentially going to be longer than that, I'm usually using our standard heads.
Yeah, they don't plane as much, and there's less margin for error with a narrower head. Well, there's more margin for error, I guess, because they cut the wind better.
That's wild.
It's just kind of the more.
Go ahead.
Sorry, the bigger the head, the more pressure, the more surface for pressure to act, on that front of the arrow, and so you can counteract that by having more fletching on the back. I personally like 3 higher profile vanes, like Blazer or a Max Hunter or Q2i Fusion 2, or 3 that I've tested a lot this year with about a 2.5 to 3 degree offset or helical. If you get enough fletch back there, you really kind of need more fletch in the back when you have more surface area in the front to get pushed off, just to keep it stable.
Sure.
If like lower profile, like a Max Stealth or something, or heat vanes, those are good too. I don't think they work quite as well, but in like a 4-vane configuration, I think they work great. And they work well in 3-vane too. I just see a little better steering in higher profile.
Yeah, for certain. I would agree with that, because I think the first time I was shooting the wide, I had like an AAE. It was a smaller vane, and switched to the Q2i Fusion, and definitely saw an improvement in flight. But I think I need to put a little more helical on, a little more cowbell on the fletching there.
Every podcast you manage to get cowbell into this thing.
Yes.
I tell you.
Yeah, spin is a good thing. A lot of guys, our broadheads shoot really well for, 95% of the people will come back and say, man, this is the best flying fixed head I've used. And then occasionally I get somebody that has a problem, and I'll try and work with them. And I can tell you the things to look at is, one I mentioned, have enough fletch in back. If you have a little target fletch at, straight or 1 degree offset, those don't work very well with broadheads in general, I'd say. But the bigger the fixed head, the more vane you're going to need. But also have some spin to it. Most arrows you buy with their pre-fletched are at 1 degree offset, or some are straight fletched. And I like at least 2 degree offset or helical. Having that arrow spin, all of a sudden now you have some rotational momentum that wants to keep it on track, keep it in a straight line. If you got a little wobble, let's say you get a little crosswind or something that wants to push it off track, a little wind pressure acting on that blade up front, say, that wants to push it off track. If your arrow is not spinning, just going straight, it can get pushed off track a lot easier than if it's got some rotational momentum. It's like a gyroscope. You spin up the gyroscope. It takes a lot of torque to move that thing at all.
Sure.
Same kind of thing when your arrow is flying downrange. So I like having a good amount of spin in the arrow for that reason. The other thing is that, let's just say your arrow or your insert or whatever isn't perfectly straight, and that tips off off center a little bit. Well, if it's rotating, it kind of balances itself out and can still go straight. If it's not rotating, that the pressure is just going to want to kind of keep pushing it off in the same direction, the same way. So,
right.
Yeah, those are some things. Make sure your head spin, make sure your arrows spin true, get a little arrow spinner, make sure the tip is staying right on center. That can be a problem with your arrow insert or broadhead if it's not. Tune your bow. I like to shoot through paper. It's initial kind of paper tune it. And then kind of the higher level tune is, shoot at 20 and 30 yards with a fletch shaft and a bear shaft and see, I want that bear shaft to hit like right next to the fletch shaft and be kind of parallel. And if your bear shaft's sitting way off to one side or another and that it's at some angle, well, that means your arrow's not really coming straight off your bow. And you could, and it depends on which bow you have, how exactly to tune it, but you probably can find some tuning videos on how to do that. But getting your arrow to come straight off your bow it helps you tremendously in a bunch of ways. For one, your broadheads are going to fly much better. Your field points are going to fly better too. And then you don't lose all that energy from your arrow fishtailing around on the way to the animal, and you can kind of maximize your performance.
Yep. Perfectly flying arrows do a lot better in penetration than not perfectly flying arrows. So it's just like,
got to start with a strong foundation.
Yeah. You got to start with the fundamentals, get everything flying straight, and then you can play.
Yeah, no doubt. You want that momentum to all be in line when that hits, all the momentum from your arrow, that mass times velocity, as you hit that animal, all it's going to get transferred into a force over time. And just keeping that all, having as much retained momentum as you can when you get there, and then having it all in a straight line to drive through that animal just gives you so much better penetration.
Absolutely.
Well, the fact that you're killing animals double lung full pass throughs, 20 extra yards at 80 yards and 60 yards, you have the confidence to take those shots, but you're also finely tuning your gear and equipment, which builds that confidence, and you're practicing, like you said, daily, taking those long range shots. Are you friends with Cameron Haynes? Have you shaken his hand? Like, what was that like? I feel like you'd break my bones.
I am, yeah. I'd say he knows who I am at this point. I actually met him the first time at that Denver Sportsman show. Man, I bet it's been 15 years ago now. It was when he first came out with his book, Backcountry Bowhunting. And I could say I maybe knew him before he was famous. He was the editor for Eastman Bowhunting Journal at the time, and he just gave a little seminar on backcountry bowhunting, which I listened to. I didn't actually know who he was yet. I guess I maybe read a couple of his articles on Eastman's bowhunting, but I heard him talk about loading up his pack with 60 pounds and going hunting 10 miles back and carrying his whole camp with him every day on the hunt, and then just sleeping out wherever he ended up. And I was so amazed by that. I was already backcountry hunting, but I'd backpack in and leave camp and kind of hunt from there. But I was only going a couple miles at the time, and I just couldn't believe what he was. And he was going solo way back in there. And I mean, now lots of guys do that. I mean, I do that. Tons of people do that. But at that time, I never heard of it before. This is like 15 years ago. So after the seminar, I went over. He was sitting at the Eastman's booth by himself. There was, nobody came up to ask him any questions or talk to him. So you can tell him, what a difference that would be now and with his fame. But man, I went over and talked to him for probably close to an hour. I just was intrigued by doing the backcountry hunting, and said, yeah, my wife would kill me if I was, 10 miles back by myself for 10 days. He just laughed, said, you can get satellite phones. I'd never heard of that either. But anyway, no, he was a real, just seemed like a real down to earth guy. Like he could have been a buddy of mine from high school kind of thing. And just real genuine, trying to help me out, and actually inspired me a lot to just go further in. I started hunting wilderness areas the following year. And I was just talking to a buddy of mine that started hunting with me back then. So I've been hunting wilderness areas for, kind of backcountry stuff for 16 years now. And Cam Haines is definitely an inspiration. Meeting him, talking to him, reading his book. I met him 10 years later. And now these days I meet him. I've met him at ATA, and I'll give him some broadheads, and he'll give me some feedback, things like that. So
that's cool.
Yeah, he's a good guy. A lot of people seem to give him a hard time, because he's kind of over the top with running 200 miles and carrying a bear out on his back and all this stuff, and that you don't need to do all that to be a good hunter, right?
It's just what he's doing.
No, it's just what he wants to do.
Yep.
Yeah, it's what he wants to do. He likes pushing himself to the extreme, and he's really just a guy that wants to be an ultimate bow hunter. That's the way he was. That's the impression I got from him back then. He was pushing himself just to kind of be the ultimate bow hunter, and really, he's been an inspiration to me. I've the last several years, I've been successful on, over-the-counter backcountry elk hunts with good bulls, 6-point bulls, and it's I've tried to push my level up of, fitness, shooting, knowing animal behavior. It's kind of like it takes a whole package to be successful year after year, and I've met a lot of guys that have done it over the years, and I've just kind of tried to push myself to get near that level, and I've just been enjoying as I've improved my broadheads, my gear, my shooting, my fitness level. It's probably not as good as it was a few years back, but it's still good enough that I can, like on the Montana hunt, my way of finding elk, my way of elk hunting is first put on miles until you find some elk. In our Montana hunt, we slept at the truck the first night and hiked all day the next day until we found some elk in a back basin. And when we got out, one of the guys had tracked us, and he asked me, "How many miles do you think we put on today?" I'm like, "Oh man, I think it was 20, probably over 20." He said 31 miles.
Wow, damn.
Do the math. Yeah. And
damn.
Cam could probably do 3 times, right?
Right.
He's conditioned.
Anyway,
he's conditioned for it. That's cool. Well, as we kind of trail off here a little bit towards the end, I planted the seed earlier on before we hit the record button. I think if you have a story that you'd like to share with us, we'd love to hear what your most memorable hunt has been so far. And it sounds like you got a few memories to pull from here, so I'm kind of excited to hear what you got for us.
Let's see here. The ones that are most fresh are my elk hunt, my 2 elk hunts, and my caribou hunt this year. Let's talk about the caribou hunt. That's been a kind of a dream hunt of mine for a while. First time to Alaska. I've been wanting to go up there and caribou hunt archery for years, and we finally got it done this year. With COVID and everything, I didn't know if it was going to happen, but we got up there and did it, and it was a fly-in. It was a do-it-yourself hunt, but it was a fly-in service where a plane flew us in, one at a time with a little 2-seater plane, and dropped us off. We were up in the Arctic Circle, 160 miles north of Kotzebue is where we were. So 160 miles into the wilderness. That was the last town, a little fishing village, basically, that we flew out of. Dropped us off, and it was just kind of these rolling hills, and it was all tundra. There wasn't a bush or a tree or anything. And there were some creeks flowing through there. There was mountains kind of snow-capped mountains on 5 miles either side of us. But, dropped us off there, and we started seeing caribou walking around. And so we couldn't hunt the first day. We just set up camp, and, there was only like an hour of darkness up there. So I think it got dark from like 2 to 3 a.m. So I think we slept in till 5 or 6, got up, just started spotting caribou. And at first we were pretty worried about, are we going to be able to get close to them? But and they are just an odd animal. It was kind of before the migration really started, so they're moving a lot, but they were just kind of running back and forth. We see one running one direction and another one running the exact opposite direction, like right by each other. So anyway, and occasionally one would stop or lay down, and I put the stock on one. It was standing there, so I stalked in a ways, and so open. But it kind of was down in a low. In the low areas, it was wet, so it was kind of this tussocks. It was kind of balls that had a bunch of grass on them. And so to get low enough, I was actually crawling through this stuff, and so it was a couple inches of water. So I'm crawling through water to get low enough so that I was about the level of this grass on top of these tussocks. And I crawl in, and the caribou was fitted down. I crawled in to maybe 70 yards or so to where I felt confident I could make the shot. And I've done this on mule deer where you just kind of wait for them to stand up, and they'll typically stand up and stretch a bit, and then you'd be able to draw and shoot. Well, it would pop up and run. It was probably just a defense thing where you would just bed down for a couple minutes and then pop up and run. And so this went on over and over for a couple of miles. And finally, last time he bedded down on the hillside, so where I could see his whole body, and crawled into this little berm where I felt comfortable I could make the shot, and calmed down for a bit, aimed, squeezed it off, and hard shot. He stood up, took 2 steps, and dropped. It was a beautiful caribou, and like full velvet, just this chocolate brown velvet. He had these big, big tops to him, just kind of the crazy points around. So it was an amazing hunt. And then later that day, I had a grizzly come through camp and had my first, eye-to-eye experience there with the grizzly in the Arctic. So, that ended well. He walked around us and kept on going. He was actually after my caribou carcass that was 2 miles away, but he must have smelled it from over 3 miles and passed through. So that was quite a day to remember.
We're just a little in awe over here. The pictures you just painted, man, that's like a hunt of a lifetime.
Yeah,
that's
incredible.
A dream.
That's a dream hunt. And, I hear a lot of good things about how I love to eat venison. I love to eat wild game. So I've heard nothing but good things about how good caribou tastes. So it'd be interesting to hear your take on that.
I watch enough Meat Eater to at least envision some of this stuff, but man, that's really cool.
Yeah, the caribou was really good. It was, a little different flavor, I'd say, than any other, deer or elk or animal, but it was amazing. We had pans full of it. One of the guys brought in a frying pan and some coconut oil, and we had a lot of spices. And we had 2 nights in a row, we had multiple pans full of backstrap steaks. And oh man, was that amazing. And I've had some since I've got back, and it's really good. Yeah, it's definitely a great meat to eat. Elk, I love elk. I eat elk a lot. In fact, I'm going to go eat some elk chili as soon as I'm off of this. But
that sounds good.
That caribou was great too.
It's awesome. Well, let's point people in the right direction here that may have interest in exploring more and learning more about Iron Will Outfitters and the broadheads that you guys make. I did have for those that were tuning in live, I did share, I followed along with the broadheads on your website as you were talking about them, but where do people that are listening go, and where would you recommend they go, as most of our audience is whitetail hunters here in the Midwest? I think you'd mentioned it, but let's just kind of have you touch up with that again here as we wrap up.
Yeah, you can check out our website. It's ironwilloutfitters.com. You can look through. We have some information in there. It's on, I think it's to the right, like, our story and testing and things like that. Or on the broadhead pages, you can scroll down and look at some material comparisons of our blade steel versus typical steels used out there and ferrule materials. So you can kind of learn quite a bit from our website there. Whitetail hunters, it depends a little bit on your setup but for the most part, I found very little difference in penetration force when I measured through like hide and meat, and even shoulder blade with our wide versus our standard. So I feel pretty confident that the wide head is going to work great for, most guys shooting 60 plus pounds on whitetail, probably even below. Our standard heads, V100, S100 are very popular for whitetails as well. So those are great heads. But yeah, I'd say look at those if you want to kind of follow along what's new with us. Our Instagram is at Iron Will Outfitters. We share all that information to our Facebook page too, Iron Will Outfitters. So check us out.
Great. Cool. Hey, we do have a caller. I'm going to go ahead and bring him on. Casey out of Montana. Is it Montana? No, it's Missouri. Casey, you're live on the Where to Hunt podcast. How you doing?
Good. What's up, Eric?
How you been? You got some questions for us, bud?
I was just going to say, small world. Is Bill still on?
He is. Yeah, he's still with us here on the show. Yep.
Hey, Bill, I was living in Colorado when this was like exploratory or just getting launched. I actually met Eric Whiting by chance we were both members on Rock Slide, and we just did one of the Rock Slide rallies where we just kind of all met up and did some hiking, and we were both kind of involved with startups at the time, and so I just saw this pop up, and I was like, man, I never did get to talk to Bill, but I used to talk to Eric a lot. So I've been following Iron Will for a long time. I've never bought them, never used them. Not for any reason in particular, I guess, but I see they're super successful. I follow Tony, I think it's Treach. Yeah, Treach.
Tony Treach, yep.
Slayer. He kills everything. But I think he's still using them, isn't he?
He is, yeah. That guy's amazing. That he gets once in a lifetime bucks for anybody else, and he gets them multiple per year.
It's unbelievable, man.
Yeah, Eric. Eric's still a good buddy. He's not owner. He was originally a co-founder with me. After a couple of years of work without paychecks, he decided to get a real job. But we're still buddies. We still hunt together at least once a year, and he helps me out on some things as well. So yeah, good guy.
Casey, thanks for calling in, man.
I didn't have anything else for you, Eric, unless you got any other questions for me. I didn't really bring any value to you, but just thought I'd jump on.
This is what we're here for, man. We're a platform to connect dots and create a two-way conversation. And you just wrapped up an elk hunt. Where did you go?
I was in Colorado.
Yeah. No success, but it sounds like it was beautiful.
Well, I whiffed on one, so that's just how that goes. First time in my life that I ever got buck fever or target panic or whatever, whatever you want to call it. But I could not keep my composure. It was just one of those. This bull covered, I'm going to say, about a quarter mile in like 60 seconds, and I just lost it. Shot right over him. I thought he was closer than he was because his body was so big. But that day was the day we found him, and 5 out of 7.5 days of hunting, I was in elk. So it was awesome.
Cool.
Nice.
Love it. Thanks for calling in, man. I appreciate it.
Did you have any problems? Did the fires give you any trouble this year? Oh, just that fires gave multiple problems.
I was watching that like a hawk. I've got a couple buddies that were having to make adjustments on the fly to their hunts because of the fires, and there wasn't one single fire in our unit. We did get a little smoky a few days. There was some not that far, but I would say no, we weren't really impacted by that at all, thankfully.
Good. Yeah, good. That's good to hear. They're still raging here. In fact, I'm only a couple miles from the evacuation zone right now at my place.
Oh boy!
So,
you're on a podcast with us. Goodness gracious!
I'll be safe, man. All right, guys, I'll leave you alone.
Thanks for
calling.
Yep. Take care.
Good talking to you. Take care. Bye.
Well, that's cool. Small world.
It's smaller every day.
It does. It does. Well, folks, we're going to go ahead and end the live broadcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Casey, thanks for calling in. We appreciate it. Everybody, we're live every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. We usually have a guest. If we don't, Greg will entertain you. So
sure.
That's how that goes.
Me and finger symbols or something cool.
I got some downstairs.
You do not.
Oh, yeah, for the kids.
Oh, boy.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.